Imagine waking up to the news that US Special Forces have flown into foreign capitals at night, captured a long-time leader accused of drug trafficking, and flown him straight to New York to face justice. No long war, no endless debate, just a swift operation that lasted only few hours. This is exactly what happened on January 3, 2026 in Caracas, Venezuela. US forces captured President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Celia Flores. Within days, Maduro was in a Manhattan courtroom, pleading not guilty to charges including narco-terrorism and cocaine trafficking. President Donald Trump declared that United States would run Venezuela until a safe transition could take place. These single events sent shockwaves across America and beyond. For millions of Venezuelans who fled years of crisis, it was a mix of hope and fear. For governments in Latin America, it raised tough questions about sovereignty and US power. And for everyday problem in the United States, Canada, Europe, it touched on issues that matter close to homes, oil prices, migration, drugs, and what strong leadership looks like in a dangerous world. Today, 3 months later, Venezuela is in a fragile chapter. The old dictator is gone, but real change is still unfolding slowly. This is the story of high-stakes gamble that is testing America's role in its own backyard. Venezuela was one of the most richest countries in Latin America, thanks to its vast oil reserves. But years of mismanagement under Hugo Chavez and then Nicolás Maduro turned prosperity into pain. By the mid of 2010, the economic collapsed. Hyperinflation made the basic goods unaffordable. Shortage of food and medicines became normal. Millions of Venezuelans left the country, over 7 million in total, creating one of the largest migration crises in modern history. Many headed to neighbor countries Colombia, Brazil, and even as far as United States and Europe. Maduro's government faced repeated accusations of corruption, election rigging, and ties to drug cartels. The United States and many Western countries imposed tough sanctions, especially on Venezuela's state oil company, PDVSA, to pressure the regime. Tensions rose sharply after disputed 2024 presidential election. Opposition leader claimed victory, but Maduro declared himself the winner. Protests were met with arrests. International observers raised serious doubts about the results. The Trump administration back to office revived a maximum pressure campaign. Officials accused Maduro of using oil money to support drug trafficking. US forces even stuck suspected drug boats in Caribbean. Then came January 3, 2026. In a precisely planned operation codenamed Absolute Resolve, US aircraft suppressed air defenses while special forces raided Maduro's compound in Caracas. Maduro and his wife were captured and quickly flown out. The entire action lasted just less than 3 hours. Vice President Delcy was sworn in as interim president. She quickly began cooperating with Washington, at least on the surface. The US action was unlike everything seen in recent decades in Latin America. It was not a full invasion. There was no large ground troops occupying the country. Instead, it was targeted strike focusing on removing one man and his inner circle. President Trump described it as a law enforcement mission backed by military, pointed to long-lasting US indictments after Maduro on drug charges. Critics, including some international law experts and the United Nations, called it a violation of sovereignty and act of aggression. They warned it could set a dangerous precedent. Inside Venezuela, the immediate reaction was mixed. Streets in Caracas stayed relatively calm, though tense. Some people celebrated the end of Maduro's rule. Others, loyal to Chavez the movement, protested what they called kidnapping. Importantly, the core institution, the military, the courtroom, and much of the government remained in a place. Delcy, a long-time Maduro's ally and former oil minister, took charge. She denounced the US action in public but began working closely with American officials behind the scenes. Hundreds of political prisoners were released in the following weeks. Some opposition figures returned from exile or hiding, but many key Maduro-era officials, including powerful figures like Diosdado Cabello, kept their positions. The repressive security apparatus did not disappear overnight. For the United States, the operation achieved its immediate goal, removing Maduro without prolonged conflict, and beyond about America's willingness to act decisively. Venezuela sits on the world's largest proven oil reserves. Under Maduro, production plummeted due to sanctions, mismanagement, and lack of investment. The country once exported millions of barrels per day. After the operation, the United States moved quickly to control and restart oil flows. Trump said America would run the oil sector for the time being. Revenues from sales would go into US-controlled accounts and then be used for the benefit of the American and Venezuelan people. Plans were discussed for major American firms to invest billions to rebuild the industry. By March and April 2026, oil exports started rising again, helped in part by global needs and amid other conflicts. Interim President Delcy approved reform to open the oil sector to move private investment, and a big shift from socialist policies of the past. In return, the US lifted sanctions on Delcy herself and took steps to stabilize the economy. This energy deal is at the heart of the current arrangement. It gives Washington leverage and aims to bring money back into Venezuela to ease the humanitarian crisis. Critics worry it looks too much like resources control rather than genuine partnership. Questions remain about how fairly the oil money will be shared and who truly benefits. For families in the United States, Canada, and Europe, this matters because more stable Venezuelan oil would help keep global energy prices in check during uncertain times. 3 months after Maduro's capture, daily life in Venezuela shows both progress and frustration. Many political prisoners have been freed, over 600 by early March according to reports. Some opposition voices are speaking more openly. Security and military figures from the Maduro era remain influential. Detentions from political reasons have still been reported. Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado remains in exile, and no clear date of being set for fresh, credible elections. Young Venezuelans express a mix of hope and impatience, want jobs, reliable electricity, and future at home instead of abroad. Humanitarian conditions are improving slowly with more fuel revenue, but poverty and shortages have not vanished. Migration flow have not reversed dramatically yet. Many who left are watching carefully before deciding when to return. In the broader region, in the events have started debate. Some Latin American governments criticize the US action as interference. Others stay quiet or saw it as an opportunity to reduce instability on their borders. Venezuelan operations have tested ideas about American power in the 21st century. For supporters, it shows decisive action against a regime accusation of harming its own people and fueling drugs. For critics, it raises concern about international law. Whether real democracy can take root when outside powers play such a direct role. In Latin America, the crisis has highlighted old tensions between sovereignty and stability. Globally, the events are watched closely by other powers. China and Russia, which had ties with Maduro, condemned the move. The situation also connects to wider energy question, especially as conflicts elsewhere affect oil supplies. Looking ahead, the big test is whether Venezuela, moving towards genuine democracy, settles into a new version of the old system with different faces. The United States faces choices about how long and how deeply to stay involved. The coming months will show whether these bold steps leads to lasting positive change or creates new problems. New United States and Venezuela crisis is more than a headline about one dramatic night in Caracas. It's a test how the world handles failing states, resources power, migration, and the limits of intervention in the modern era. Venezuelans deserve a chance to rebuild their country with dignity and freedom. Americans and their allies want fewer drugs on their streets, stable energy, and secure borders. Achieving all of that will require patience, smart policies, and listening to the voices of the Venezuelan people themselves. What happens next in Venezuela will shape not only Latin America, also how the United States is seen as global leader for years to come.